Alexander, you ready?
I'm always ready.
Let's get a jump on this. All right, so technical game for understanding. So using technical games for understanding is basically the topic for tonight. Welcome again. Nice seeing you guys. Just a couple of things in terms of updates. The female under 20 team, they lost their second game. They are now back here. They are completed 7 days of this quarantine that they are supposed to do. The national under 17 they continue in their preparation to go to badminton later on in the month or next month, and the U20 continues their process. They have completed 4 sessions and 1 game thus far. They will complete another training session tomorrow in their zones, and then on Saturday there'll be another set of games. Last week went well. It was a good showing. An initial list of players were chosen, and things seem to be shaping up quite fine as it relates to the team. As it relates to other footballing activities, the community college are trying to begin their program, but at the moment they are uncertain if they will be allowed to do what it is they were trying to do, or if they will have to modify or postpone depending on what the CMO says. So the word practice game series as well as the sign of practice game series have both been put on hold because of the current sort of COVID-19 cases. So that's basically where we are in football at the moment. So for today, tell me I will forget, teach me I will remember, involve me and I will learn. So that's how we'll start off today's session, and that was a quote from Benjamin. So what we're really gonna look at today in terms of objective is basically what is using the technical games or games to develop players. So it's more moving away of a context that deals primarily with the holistic side rather than analytical side. So it's more based around games instead of individual technique. So when we think about the game, think obviously there's the tactical side of the game, the technical side, the physical side of the game, and the psychosocial side. But we start from the technical side. It speaks of the individual, how fit they are, and how well they are, how good they are with manipulating the ball. Obviously, we talk physical, we talk individual again, which is their ability to perform the necessary tasks for the entire night. Similarly, we talk tactically, we speak more so again in the context of individual. Are they really understanding how what they're supposed to do? Psychosocial, on the other hand, also speaks of the individual, but most of the individuals of the team interact. And then similarly, each of these different facets of the game are also not just singular in the context of individual player, but also in the context of team. So can the team work together in a physical context? Can they work together in a technical context? Can they work together in a tactical sense? So with these in mind, many of the different persons who would have tried to coach or study football, they have used different philosophies. So for example, some some persons would have tried to teach the game based on the technical side, so the focus is more on the technical side. But then they would recognize that when you train technical side, they they may not develop the physical and the tactical side. And similarly, they may not develop the psychosocial side of the game. Then, obviously, there are some who think that the game is physical and their training is based around the physical side of the game. And hence, there have been different philosophies and ways to look at how the game should be taught. But in context or in essence, what if we try to teach the game based on all of the elements at once instead of focusing on one particular side of the game? It would be more an economical trade. So the questions you will really ask is, how can we teach the game? That's a question. How can we teach the game to players so that they could learn? What's the process? What's the pedagogical means by doing this? What's the andragogical means of doing this? How do we prepare players for the game? So how do we prepare them technically, tactically, psychosocially, and physically? Similarly, do we develop each part individually or do we develop them collectively? Do we consider the team or the individuals first? Which of these do we really look for when we are starting to coach or try to teach the game? So I'll open here for Mr. Alexander. Any comments on any of these questions? Or I see ZT Blade here present now. So the context is, have you ever really asked yourself these questions? And if you have asked yourself these questions, how did you approach them?
In sense of the technical aspect, I always teach in a way, always coach in a way whereby you have to be technically sound. The physical aspect, I need to work on. It all depends on the age group. And it's like, if I can get like the physical aspect done, I think majority of the team will be much better because my kids are usually technically sound, but majority of the time we get bullied, okay, and and it all depends on which age group. You will advise them, okay, you guys have to go at the gym and 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 work out, get get some strength in throughout throughout the season, because what I see in the high schools up here is like, before the high school child, they bring every player in for 2 weeks for a workout, and then during the high school child, you have to be able to run 5 miles within a certain time. So those things is real physically fit. So I think if I can implement that, my team will be much better physically. That's all I have to say.
So your focus, you said, would have been on the technical side.
Yeah.
But you think you could do better on the physical side.
Yeah, yeah.
So then how then do you relate on the psychosocial side and tactical side?
Well, with the social side, right? And there's so many things in the media. These kids usually have their own groups, okay? Whether it's Instagram, uh, uh, Snapchat. So these kids they usually have uh, those social capabilities. Back back in the days when when I was coaching my first son team, it's like every 2 weeks we used to have pizza at this restaurant. So the whole team will show up and everybody bring 10, 15, and and then and then we will there and we will have fun, we will laugh, we will talk, and everything.
In the context of field itself, as in when you have training,
Yeah.
is there ever a consideration in terms of your training itself, how to implement the psychosocial side as well as the tactical side?
Well, well, this is where the social aspect usually comes in, because although my practice is technical, we usually make it fun, where everybody enjoy it. We laugh, we talk, we bullshit. We talk about Man City, talk about Chelsea, we talk about Man United, we talk about Arsenal. We have entertaining conversation.
Yeah. You get to know each other and work with each other as well.
Yeah, yeah, and 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 if you want to hear a conversation and everybody speak, let Man United lose. It's usually one of my worst practice, because they will make sure they come early just to banter me. And everybody at the same time, all 18 players.
All right, that's interesting because you are a bit Manchester United, but that's true.
Yep.
All right. So again, these are the questions we want to try to answer when we're looking at how to train, what we want, what particular style or methodology or pedagogical style that we want to use. We have heard of periodization, tactical periodization. We may have heard of football periodization. We might have heard of analytical training. We might have heard of global training. We might have heard of holistic training. This is just another context in which to look at in terms of how to develop. And one of the things that this particular thing that we're talking about, or this style, is what they believe in, to develop skill. You first have the technique, and then you add pressure. This will then determine if you have the skill. So skill in the context of the game would then obviously mean you have technical skill, tactical skill, plus pressure, and this will then improve what we consider as skill within the game. But what has happened, or what I recognize, is that we teach each of these separately. So we might say, okay, we teach in technical skills today, or we maybe teach in tactical skills today. But if we're honest, if we practice by ourselves hitting the ball off the wall, it doesn't necessarily improve our skill, but it may do, it may improve our technique. It is under pressure by the opponents or the different decisions that you have to make that will define whether or not you have the skill to play the game. And it is from this merit that the technical games for understanding are used. It is within this particular context where you play technical games, or games, we may look at them maybe as rondos, for example, to teach the tactical, technical side, physical and psychosocial side of the game within those simple contexts. All right. So when we talk about the TGFU, I was told today that is Garden Fundamental University, but no, it's not. It's teaching games for understanding. The technical game for understanding model was first created in the United Kingdom in the early 1980s. The ideas were spawned by Thorpe and Bunker in 1982 and drew on earlier work on Aldrin and Redford. All right. Now, when we look at the technical games model, propose an alternative to technique approach, which is what most persons may try to do. So it's just an alternative because it was noted that the technique practice in isolation did not transfer into the game. So we may decide to do technical practice, but it really doesn't translate to what the game really is. Right? Similarly, the technical game model was proposed as a way to put the why of the game before the how. So when we think technical side, what we are figuring out is how we can solve the problem. The game model is trying to figure out why we use a specific technique or why we do what we do to get the result that we want. And depending on the author that you listen to, they would also say that technique is not an absolute thing because we may say that this is the best technique to use, but then the point is not sometimes not the technique, but it's the ability to solve the question that the opponents are asking. And if you're able to do that, then obviously the technique that you use is good. So a prime example would be we don't teach our strikers to kick the top punch, but it is a means by which we can score a goal. So are you saying the goal is not valid if they use a football? It is the technique at that given time would have solved the problem that the striker had. So therefore, that was the correct technique to use. Now, technical game model provides a way of organizing game content so that the player can make conceptual connections between what often seems to be dissimilar games. All right, so we may in our practice do some quote unquote technical games or we do different things, but the context in using this particular style is that each game connects to each other so that I could solve the questions of the questions that the players may have to solve within the game context. The model emphasizes tactical similarities among games so that young learner might better understand common principle of similar games and come to understand games more deeply and play them more effectively. So, Mr. Alexander, in all your years of coaching, can you say that there's really only 4 drills you want?
Oh, yeah. if it's 4 drills.
Yeah. 4 drills alone.
It all depends on the age group. It's like sometimes, as you said, playing a ball on the wall, it doesn't mean that you are technically sound.
Skillful. You might have technique, but you ain't skillful because you can't use it in the game.
Yeah. So with that said, you got to be able to play under pressure to see how you can solve whatever issue. So in coaching is the physical aspect, the technical aspect, the social aspect, and the other one.
Like tactical, technical.
Yeah. So all of them regular come together and
Jump out the word. Alexander. Okay. All right. Seems like he would have dropped out. Breaking up. All right, so let's until he gets back. So the context with which we look at the TGFU model, it starts obviously always with the law and order player. From the player, we then look specifically at the game. So whatever the player needs should be the game that we choose to do should be tailored around this. Then as the game is being played, the player gets an appreciation for the game. Then they develop tactical awareness. And then they're making the appropriate decisions, what to do, how to do it, which would obviously be the tactical side. And then skill acquisition takes place. So in solving these questions, what to do, how to do it, when to do it, where to go, how to do it, this is developing the skill now itself within the process. And as the player develops the skill, then they could perform, meaning they are efficient, or the action is autonomous, and then it moves back again to the game, which is we then modify the game again, and then we try to increase the pressure, increase the knowledge of the player, change the context. So this is basically what is taking place throughout using the context of this technical game for understanding. So using these games, the context is to create games which will help develop players' basic needs. Even if it is that your focus is, let's say, technical ability. If you look at a rondo, it obviously teaches you 1, to penetrate, 2, right body shape, 3, having the right touch on the ball, and that's from the attacking side. And the defensive side, it is now how do we pressure, how do we keep compact, how do we move together. And then obviously both sides learn now how to transition once the session allows for it, which is you teach them where to go, how to press, then transition into the defensive side. So that is the general context here again. So what are the features of the game sense drill? So what are the features that makes this? It's a open skill drill, and repetition of a skill is varied. So when we talk open skill, we're basically saying to perform this skill, there are numerous variables that will happen. So one, they have to pay attention to player there, for example, passing the ball. Two, where is the player going? Three, what is the opponent doing? Versus if it were two players solely standing up in front of each other, controlling and passing, then it becomes less of an open skill and more to the closed skill side because there's no pressure, there's no change, and the variables remain constant. So the context for this, using the open skills drill, it is for them to acquire skill. When we are doing tasks which doesn't have pressure and not a lot of variables, focus is solely on technique and not necessarily skill. All right. So it's implicit learning, meaning it's open to the player. The player themselves dictate what they learn, what they understand, what they're seeing, and how it is. A lot of questioning is done. So it is not a context where the coach goes in and gives instruction. It is more asking the question. Repetition of tactical scenarios. So once we keep this particular scenario going for roughly about less than 10 minutes, the same skills, the same movements, the same context will continually be repeated, and the player will then develop skill that is required to solve this particular question that they need to solve. So there's different variable conditions. So the coach could then decide on the size, the number of players, which ball has to be played, the touches, where the ball has to be played. So obviously varying skills can be developed. And a quote that is key for this particular context is great players are not born, they are developed through practice and hard work. Michael Jordan said this. So in taking this particular quote in context, if the player is working hard and they're not developing skills, then what's the point of training? So then now comes on to the coach. Am I coaching the right way? Am I teaching the right way? So understanding what open skill is, what implicit learning is, how we give instructions, or how we get the players to recognize what they need to recognize, and how do we create different variables, and how do we have repetition would also dictate the type of player we create and their understanding of the game. Any questions or comments before I continue?
Good night, Theon. How are you?
I'm always good.
Good night, Akeem. Apologize for being late.
You're fine.
Yeah,
Right,
I was thinking about what you were just saying. I was thinking about this the other day because, I have some players that I train that who are naturally, they come motivated. They come motivated, and others do not. And so sometimes I find myself on this fence of guilt. Like, am I motivating them, or is it just, is it my role to motivate them? How much do I need to motivate them? These are things that pass through my mind, in practice and when I'm at home also. So it's just some thoughts.
So a question would be, why are they there?
Right.
Why are they really? Right. Are they there because of the parents, or are they there because you're babysitting? Are they there because there's something else? I think that could give you some context as well.
Right.
So it may not necessarily mean that you have to be coaching them, or be coaching them to be managers, or coaching them to be coaches. Find out what they like and then use that avenue to then get them to want to play. So it's varying ways to look at it.
Right.
Do I modify the style that I use? Things to consider. I have those kind of nights where I'm thinking about what I should do.
Yeah. And if possible, are they in the correct group? Is there another group that they might flourish and better at that point in their life, you know, for different reasons. Thank you.
Teaching and learning are in this particular context, which is the technical games for learning or understanding. The technical game model is the use of mixed teaching strategies. Teaching strategies include direct and indirect teaching styles and problem solving strategies. So direct would mean I am instructing them specifically what I need to get done. Or indirect could mean I am organizing the session so that they can solve the problem. So within this particular style, both styles can be used to get the players to learn and to develop skills. Although the model is predominantly emphasized indirect question-driven teaching. That's what it is really and truly. So problem solving is based more around having the right questions to ask the players and not necessarily instructing the players on what to do. Creating the right organization of your session so that the players could understand or solve the problem that you TGFU can be implemented in all grades from levels K-12, but is especially effective in elementary grades. Now, instruction versus inattentional blindness. I found this quite interesting. Right? So, if I were to tell you, look for the blue or look for the specific player, that's the instruction I give, you have to then understand that the attention of the player becomes that. So the point I'm trying to bring across is the instruction we give create blindness to the given player. So the focus or the instruction you may give them is to tackle the number 6, but number 6 may not be the person who needs to be tackled at a given time. But because the instruction was to give this or be specific with this, create what we call inattentional blindness. So the key point here is we have to be careful with what instructions we're giving players, because attention is it's a very hard thing to develop within players, because our attention could only be on one specific thing. As we grow older, we're able to focus not on varying things, but to change our focus quicker from one thing to the next. All right, so when we say we're multitasking, we're not necessarily doing 2 things at a time. What we're really doing is doing one and the other very quickly. So it's something to consider. All right. Now, when we talk instructions and creating this inattentional blindness, we have to now consider decision making. How does the player make their decision, or how can we help the player to make their decision? So first, they have to have a technical knowledge. What to do if what is happening. So what do I do if something is happening? All right. They then have to, obviously, within the technical side, have game understanding. So they must know the rules, they must know the team plans and the possibilities. So in making decision, the player must have tactical knowledge. Then, in making decision, they also have to have an idea of how to read the game, or what is happening next, what are the patterns they can recognize, what are the movement cues. So in understanding these 2 things, then the player can make a decision. Now, here's the question, or here's what we need to think about. If the player technical knowledge is limited, then what they perceive or what they are reading may also be limited. So within this context, it is our responsibility to give them the knowledge or teach them the knowledge of what to do and how to answer the questions within the game, recognizing the patterns and the movements and the cues. So this is what separates the better players because they have a better tactical knowledge, they have better reading and game. Therefore, they should be able to make better decisions throughout the game. Pause here for any questions or comments after this. Right. So the decision-making process, what really happens? So first we have to scan. So we look around, we try to figure out what's going on. So in scanning, we get the picture. So now we could even look at now, as coaches, we now try to help them to understand. In order to scan, you have to see the entire feet. So now we're looking at body position. The better body position you have, the more able you are to scan the entire feet. From scanning the field, you obviously create a perception. What do I believe is happening? What do I see is happening? But obviously, this will be based on past events. It will be based on past events and what you understand, obviously, and what is taking place. Then you decide what I am going to give attention to. So what is the key part, or what, based on what I perceive, what should get my attention. Then, as a result of giving my attention there, I then have to respond. So I select a specific response that I want. And then by selecting the response, and then I get the feedback whether the response I made was good or bad, then it teaches me particular skill. Now, as a result, let's think about it from the top. If I don't know how to scan, if I don't know what to perceive, if I'm unable to pay attention to the right things that I need to pay attention, and if I don't select the correct response, then I am learning bad skills or bad habits. So this is where the coach comes in to teach right scanning, perception, the attention, the specific response that is needed, and to reinforce the right skills. Right? So a lot, I just said a lot. So it's key now what instructions we give, because then we now create some blindness because the attention will be focusing on specifically what we say. And if that is what we're really looking for. This is how they learn the knowledge of the game and the tactics and reading the game. All right. Now, when we do this specific type of training, there are 3 main areas involved. So the first area would be, again, the technical side. So once we decide to do this type of technical games for understanding, the first thing obviously is the technical, because once you pass in receiving, you must develop the technical side. So as a result, you kick to advance or control, marking, or set shots. All of these things will happen. Now, what would happen as a result is there will be high repetition, pressure, implicit and variables that will help you to learn the technical side within the small side. So within these games, you're gonna learn technical side. So technical doesn't necessarily mean it has to be isolated. And again, when we talk technique and skill are different. Skill is your ability to perform technique or the technical stuff under pressure. So the next one would be the tactical skills. So within any game, obviously, you're gonna have either you have possession, you don't have possession, you're about to lose the ball, you're about to keep the ball. So now you get a greater understanding of what needs to be done in each of these phases. And as a result, it then teaches you to improve your decision making, how to function, how to use what specific skills under pressure. To develop this, we have to look at low reps, high pressure, large-sided games, explicit and implicit learning. So we have to give some direction, but also allow them to learn. And it should be structured scenarios, especially if you have a specific game model which you want to develop. So again, Last one would obviously be playing style. So in doing this, there's a framework within the decision are made. So again, if we randomly create sessions or randomly create training, and we're not focusing on the style of play we want, when the players then go onto the field, they're not going to reflect that particular style that you want. So their decision making should be based around what style you would want them to do. So an example would be, we know that one of the first principles of attack is penetration. Now, within your game model, it may mean penetration for you may mean pass the ball to the first line, or pass the ball to the second line, or it may mean dribble the ball, or it may mean play the diagonal. So for each particular system or style of play, the decision that the player has to make will vary. Hence, when you are doing your game plan or your strategies for training, you have to take that into consideration, that this is how I want him to play. All right. Now, in trying to teach this particular skill, you have to look at it in the context of implicit, so learning through experience without direct instruction. This is quite key within the process, but also some implicit learning must take place because you have to make sure they have specific information they need to learn, or to learn the style of play. But what is also key here is, again, instructions we give are quite key because it also creates blindness within their attention, because the instructions you give will then define what they pay attention to or what they try to solve. I'll pause here again for any questions or comments. Loaded discussion tonight.
Where would you say parents yelling instructions from the sideline would fall?
So that would be explicit. All right. So now it also creates blindness to the player. So whatever you do, so if I tell you to look left, you will consistently look left, but looking left may not necessarily be the right decision to make because you're now blind to what is on the right. If I tell you to pass the ball forward consistently, I am making you blind to all the other possibilities of what could be done. So you're developing the player explicitly, meaning to focus or pay attention to this one particular track, instead of allowing them to play and give general guidelines. For example, try to play forward once you have the ball. You didn't give them direction, you didn't tell them how long, how far. Then they themselves can learn within the process, one, how hard to kick it, what part of my foot to kick it. So that would be the technical side. Where is the player moving? What are the trends I see? Where do I pass it? So that would then decide now the tactical side. Now, then if I do it consistently in a specific way, that would then define the style of play that you want them to do. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Why aren't you walking? Why aren't you walking? I didn't see you coming. Is this the type of players you want to produce? They only walk for the coach or when the coach shouts or when they give a specific instruction. For me, coach is a facilitator in everything and not necessarily the person who dictates what should happen. Or if it is a situation where that is happening, means players are unable to function without you. And obviously, once they're on the field, there won't be any coach, and they're unable to make the right decisions that they should be making. All right. So why implicit game-based training? Why? Why should we do it? Why should we really do it? Right, so if players have better decision making skills because the tasks are open skills. So the techniques executed is in varied situations would help. Right. Well rehearsed techniques can break down under fatigue and pressure. So again, this is the other context. If we continually focus on technique, we won't be developing the skill that is necessary to use the technique. Right? So this type of training needs to be facilitated by the coach. Resource strongly support implicit training is more effective in transferring to performance than explicit. So simply, you allow players to learn. So my first quote was, if you tell me, I will remember. No, I won't remember. You show me, I will remember. And if you involve me, then I would learn. So the context is if we involve them within the games to solve the problems, then they would learn how to solve problems as it was in the game. Hence, the coach being a facilitator and not a dictator. All right. A lot of times, we behave as if we are playing a video game and we have players attached to the game and we are pushing them left, pushing them right, and so forth. The players have no freedom to by which they can express themselves within a specific context. And this is because of the training that we're doing. All right. We sometimes as coaches think that we are playing or we are skill players. So this is something we need to step back and really take a view of and what it is to be a coach at the sideline. It's constant talking, it's constant shouting, constant instructions. This is something that we need to look at. So the methods of how to do this particular task. So implicit games are more durable in terms of players learning. So a lot more learning takes place when you use these small-sided games for the players. Features of implicit game-based training. So first, obviously, once you do this, it is more player-centered. Coach guided or facilitated players to explore options. So players are given the opportunity to explore different options of solving different problems. Coach needs to ask questions instead of dictating. Emphasis on decision making in tactical situations that can occur in a match. So whatever you do has to be game related and structured around this particular style that you want, so that the players are able to solve the problem that you want and make the right decisions. Implicit learning or subconscious learning. Learning from the mistakes. So it's one of the key things as well. So subliminally they tend to learn, but what is key as a coach and as a facilitator is to help them to recognize the patterns that are there so that they could actually learn or understand more what the situation is. Indirect learning through problem solving. Again, the coach needs to be a facilitator. I'll pause here again for any comments or questions that we have come up as we are here. All right. Now, how does it work again? So one, techniques or movement patterns can be broken down in competitive situations with distraction. So we may think that to teach a particular technique, it means no opponents, they need to get right, they need to get consistent. What they believe within this technique is you start with pressure, but the pressure must be minimal. Then increase pressure as they improve their skill of this particular technique. Practicing with variety of scenarios can improve attention, only relevant cues. So now we're teaching them what to look for, or what are the things we want from them. All right. It also improves decision making, skills through experience, learn from good and poor decisions. Repetition repetition is constant within small-sided games. They're constantly in possession, they're constantly in transition, they're constantly in defensive scenarios. So then they begin to understand what decisions need to be made within the different scenarios. Decision making becomes autonomous or automatic or subconscious, and need to make mistakes to learn. You need to make mistakes to learn. That's a human trait that we have. All right. A poor performance is not failure, it is feedback. So this is something to consider. Poor performance is not failure, it's feedback to help us to move forward in what we're doing. So coaching, game sense, or using the games itself as guidelines for developing the games of training. So now I'm gonna give you some context of how it can be done and what should be done. So first, you have your aim or your theme or expected outcome, and you play it within a small sided game. It could be 2v2 up to 6 players. All right. Replicate typical scenarios. So, prime example would, for example, be 3v3, 2v2, and then you're trying to get them to do a specific type of action. So whether it is to support the ball or whether it is the right body shape, we then create that particular scenario to allow for that to happen. All right. So the length will obviously be important, the time for repetition. So how long are we gonna do this particular drill is quite key. So again, if the drill is repeated a lot, then we're focusing on 10. If it is we are a lot more numbers, then we are more guided towards the technical side, the tactical side. And if we have them playing a specific way, then it then leads to the style of play that you want. So the rules and the area of the field that we use will also help within this particular context. Variation of games are needed, and you need to prepare questions that you will want to ask them and not just get them off the fly. All right. Block or random variable practice. So within this context, you have to sometimes focus solely on one given thing or one given tactic or one given technique should be your focus, and not trying to solely trying to correct every single thing that may take place. All right. So for us, when we're looking at coaching games, so how we teach within this. So for us, a brief explanation of the rules and limitations, let gameplay, and then you observe and you evaluate the situation. Is it working? Then if it is, you leave it as it is, or do we need a modification? You trade. So you vary the pressure or the difficulty. So how many players play against how many players will dictate that as well. The spacing and the size will also dictate that as well. Ask individual questions during the game, not necessarily solely when the ball is out. Recognize when is the coachable moments, meaning sometimes can they solve the problem or they come up with the answers themselves. Recognize when would be key to teach, and it will also be key to also remember that what you say creates blindness to a lot of the other things that are taking place in the game. All right, so freeze play. Give them a walkthrough and a demo, and then you step back again to allow them to play. So it's more about them and less about you. Feedback and decision. So you ask them why they did a specific thing, just to understand where they're thinking and what they're thinking, and then you could probably give them some guidelines and guidance within your style or whatever you're trying to teach. All right, turn feedback into questions and not statements, or try to tell them how you want to play. More so give them guidelines under which you can follow. So how do we question? So the coach's role is to assist the players in solving tactical problems. That's basically what you're there for, to help them to solve tactical problems. To solve the technical problems, you have to, one, know how to work with your team. Two, which will be psychosocial. Two, you need to know what technique I need to solve it, whether it is passing, dribbling, and how we run, where we run, or is it a physical particular skill? Do I need to apply speed? Or I need to apply power? Do I need to apply strength? There are four concepts we need to take into consideration. So one would be the time. When should you? So when should I do this? So this is what you're trying to teach them within this session. When should I do this particular skill or task? The space, where should I do it? The risk, which options are basically the better one. So it may be a situation where they are going to press, but it may well be that it is better to delay, or it may be better to keep compact. And then the execution, how should I do it? All right. So in teaching players to solve problems, what they have to understand is have the right timing. So when they should do it, which space or which particular area they should do it, which option is the right option to take, or which one helps the team more. 3, how do I execute the specific task that needs to get done? Use open-ended questions to check for understanding. Turn feedback into questions. So the when, what, where, why, and maybe how to get these particular questions answered. And it is less about you giving them instructions. Pause here again for any questions or comments. The level of pressure is key when we're looking at in terms of constraints and how we approach the game. So how much pressure are we giving the players? Is it gonna be numbers up, numbers down, even numbers? What size of field are we looking at? This will dictate what type of pressure we're basically looking to apply to the scenario. The size, the shape of the area, number of players, rules, time in possession, what to do, methods of scoring, positions or zones, how you want to play. All right. Now, what are the learning demands? So the goal of the TGFU model is affect all 3 learning domains. So it's the psychomotor, the cognitive, and the affective domain. So it's within the technical, the tactical, the physical, the technical, the tactical, the psychosocial, all aspects of the game. So in reality, the TGFU model mostly affects the psychomotor and the cognitive domain. So it is more along that particular line, helping them to understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. And then the how is more subconscious within the context. Emphasis on cognitive aspects of the gameplay enable less skilled players to value their own performance, even when they are only in supporting role. Therefore, makes learning and participating in games more worthwhile. So it is more to help the psychosocial side and assist with players learning to play with players to understand the tactical side of the game and how they apply the technique. So what would be some of the benefits? I'll ask you guys to give me some of the benefits that you think may be derived from using this particular type of methodology of teaching. So what are some of the advantages you think may come about? So one of the pros of using this particular type of learning or type of pedagogy is increased time in gameplay. Motivational and enjoyable. Players are more willing to play games instead of standing around and passing and running and whatever else isolated skills that you may have them doing. Strong link between skills and games. So now technique is not solely for technique, but technique is now based on improving skills for the game. Student value skill practice instead of more so technical, because now once they're able to execute skill, they're able to answer a lot more questions that may be asked of them on the field. Application and performance of skills. So you got a lot more time to apply the different skills that you have and to modify your performance as a result or improve your performance. So there's the tactical component. So you understand what needs to be done in defense, what needs to be done in attack, and different transitions. So what will be some of the negatives of this particular style? So it will be focused more on competition. So players may get carried away in the competition aspect of it and may not focus on maybe the rules and what needs to get done. Game playing may not be enjoyable to some. Opportunities to participate may be limiting. Poor teaching resources. So one, you may not have enough bars, you may not have enough cones or whatever it is. But in closing, something I want us to think about is when you were younger, wasn't this the way you learned to play football? It was never isolated, nobody ever came about that and tell you this is how to do it, this is what. It was more implicit learning where you show up to a particular playing area, a group of players decide to play, and you learn the game from that particular context. Maybe you would have called some elderly person to tell you a couple of things, but it was never directed more so to you. So this is really the context that they're trying to bring back, which is more, how could we structure street football a little bit more to have the players. All right, this is the end of my presentation for today. Welcome, Mr. Carrington. It's nice to see you.
Nice to be here. I mean, I think I'm glad you mentioned that towards the end, because that's the way we grew up playing. When we were growing up, it used to be 3 goals and you're out. You have to score 3 goals. Then after you score the 3 goals, well, you're the winner. Then the defense come in and score another, So you have to play, you have to stop them from scoring the 3 goals. Right? And when you time to go, and you have to try to score 3. So back in them time, nobody really teach us that. You understand? It just came naturally.
Yep.
And when I hear you have this topic tonight, I just say I really think back to that. You understand? Because we learn the game through the game.
Through the game.
You understand? So I think that was really, that was really important. And always, right, there was always someone who's better than the other. So he'll be somebody similar, well, you will be the coach really, but you will look up to him to see exactly what he's doing.
Yep.
So because, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to see how, things coming back around, or football coming back around to how it used to be.
He's recreating that particular scenario, but giving it a bit more structure as a coach now.
And you talk about, the fun of it, right? And it really used to be fun and very competitive also.
I heard my father talk about a specific game, which he said is fight for yourself.
Right. Right.
I found that interesting. So obviously you're gonna learn to dribble.
Yes.
And get stronger. And obviously you're gonna learn to tackle.
Yep.
If you want the ball. So that too was interesting. So everybody doing? Thinking how things on your side.
Recording stopped.
How is Patrick? What's going on?
Patrick gonna game yet? You score a goal yet?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking you. You guys explained that he was struggling in terms of getting players and that kind of stuff.
What do you think about the school studying? Well, you could tell about us. I mean, you could tell us what's going on. The girls are back, right? You know, the 17 girls are back. They're in quarantine.
Not the 17s, the 20s.
They're on 20, yeah, on the 20 back.
Yeah, they're back. I was out there in the park today.
Right.
I saw them out there. They will be there for another week. So they have
So
to
what
work.
happened now with that program now?
What happened with that program? So the essence of that is some of those girls I think will go up to the senior team, so they will continue training. I'm looking to still keep them in training because I want them to compete against the senior girls on a consistent basis. So some players may impress and then get pulled into the senior team, and some parts will drop out. So that's a context that we're looking at the moment.
That makes sense. And I know something leaving pretty soon.
Yep. Pretty soon.
Is
They
the US
would be, yeah, they'll be in Badminton.
Wow.
They would be probably out from their houses for roughly about 24 days.
Wow. So what is the situation with the US when you travel into the US like that now?
There's no problem until I think it's November. So they will be able to get in without vaccination.
Right.
So what has to happen now, they have to go to Barbados, quarantine for 8 days.
Wow.
Then from there, it would roughly be out a day or 2 days before they get back their visas. And then it wouldn't make sense for them to come back here. So they may just be in Barbados a little longer than expected, and then they would then move on to Badminton. That's where we are.
So
Where did you say they're headed to? Bradenton?
It's Bradenton. Where's
Florida?
that part of it? Yeah.
Well, Miami, whatever. So
Wait, Miami or Bradenton?
Is this
Bradenton. Hold on. Go ahead.
So when Connie come out of the quarantine now, that means you have to pass the team over to him?
Yep. Well, actually, Hardis is already out, so I just did my last session with them today, basically.
So it's a different system of play. It's different style.
I didn't teach anything style oriented. I taught more understanding what to do in attack, what to do in defense. So what it is, so what it means to create width, what it means to create depth, what it means to pressure, what it means to cover. Just those general concepts, but within a game context. But we're all on the same page. Are we getting there in terms of how the team should play? So wouldn't be anything far out.
You seen that team when I look at practice today? You seen that team?
I don't know. I can't tell you. You quicker tell me that and I tell you.
Scamla, you there?
Theon, I'm backtracking a moment. So are they flying into Miami?
Yeah, I'm trying to find the information with you.
Okay.
Theon,
And then would they be traveling straight that same day? When you find out, let me know. Because if they stay one night in South Florida, I would love to go and see them.
I think they usually go to the MIG complex.
Yeah, it's the MIG.
Yeah, the MIG complex.
IMG.
Yeah.
Yeah,
IMG.
Okay. Right.
That complex they usually. That's where they play all the games and the hotels and everything.
Can I start cutting players already for the honors when? Yes. You should be roster already? How many down to now?
Yes, we have 11. I think it's 40.
From how much?
From 70.
Wow. Of that 40, right? Would you select 25 and then play for the national team already? Whether it's
What?
out of that 40 that remaining, would you say at least 25 play for the U15 or the U17 already? Or you won't have that?
Most possible. Yeah. Possible.
What's the date of that tournament?
We have 2 months.
So they have 2 months to get ready. Well, it's more than enough. It's more than enough. This guy is this kid is there. Saviola is there, right?
Yeah, but he's struggling right now to make the team.
Let me struggle.
Telling you, what competition is like.
Well, here they're very small.
That's how I always think it.
Wait.